Okay, lucky me, because I don't want to stand between you and lunch that immediately. So fortunately, I get to go first. So thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here. Several friends in the room, and I've learned so much this morning. And you know, I think just to maybe kind of state the obvious, exclusion from the workforce has a really deleterious effect on community health. It was interesting to hear Ian say this morning, you know, 40% of the reason for premature death is behavioral. And it's certainly true that if you're excluded from the economy, you're excluded from work, that's going to have a very significant impact on your behavior. My view of business and society has been deeply influenced by the founder of REDF, George Roberts, a key leader in the business community. And he's really been dedicated for decades to the idea of inclusion in the economy for everyone. And this, kind of his quote is almost our motto: if you don't have a job, you don't have hope. If you don't have hope, what do you really have? And sort of the profound nature of complete exclusion from the economy is something that he has chosen to address. And more recently, I've been really impressed by and interested in Michael Porter's work. He's the kind of strategy guru at Harvard, very influential. He's come up with a whole new framework that he calls shared value. And the challenge that he's been making to the business community, I think very apropos of this session, is he said, the purpose of the corporation has to be redefined as creating shared value, not just profit per se. And he's positing that this will drive the next wave of innovation and productivity growth in the global economy and reshape capitalism and its relation to society. You know, those are pretty ambitious words, and what he's essentially trying to say is not that it's a nice to do or something that has to get forced by government intervention or something else, but that the businesses that compete well in the future, the businesses that win as businesses, are going to be those that are contributing the most to society. And I think that's actually quite a profound and interesting notion. I've been really taken with it, so I urge you to follow his work. So I wanted to give you a little sense of kind of what is social enterprise, what's its role and value, what have some of the impacts been, and then what's the role of the business community in taking this forward. So social enterprise still not, this is, you know, there's not a dictionary definition yet. A lot of people use different definitions, but we think of it in this way. They leverage a business approach to address a social mission. So in our lexicon, these are, you know, sort of not any nonprofit in the world that's doing something innovative, not any business that just has a charitable campaign, and frankly, not any business that just happens to do something good for society, because you could argue that many businesses do, or just a business that's trying not, you know, kind of to reduce whatever harm it's creating. This is really about a deliberate attempt to create social value. And then with REDF specifically, we focus on a certain type of social enterprise. So these are mission-driven businesses that are really focused on hiring and assisting people who face barriers to work so that they are prepared for work and they can move into the workforce. There are social enterprises that have many other social missions. It may be around the environment. You know, we've heard about several today: health, products and services, things like that. The particular social mission of the social enterprises we work with is around the employment of people who otherwise are very unlikely to get into the workforce. So just to kind of describe that in a little bit more detail, we think of these social enterprises as the place where people who are not likely to get hired either because of their background or because they're really not quite ready to work, they're not prepared for work, can get a job and get the support that they need in order to then move on into the mainstream workforce. And we're focused on a target population that includes people with histories of homelessness, people who have been incarcerated, young people, sometimes called opportunity youth, who are disconnected from school and from work, and often people with mental health disabilities or who have faced addiction issues. And then there are many social enterprises in this arena around the country that focus on people with other developmental and even physical disabilities. That's not as much the focus of REDF's work, but we're very much part of that family. Often these entities are run by nonprofits, but not exclusively. We can talk about that a little bit more later. They do provide this kind of experiential learning, on-the-job training. They pay wages. You're learning hard and soft skills while you're on the job. You begin to really feel like you're a worker. A lot of these folks have not worked before. Receiving the supports that they need to stay employed. And then on the business side, we're really talking about revenue-generating businesses that create a product or service of some type that the market wishes to purchase. There have to be customers for those goods and services so that they're bringing in that revenue, and then they employ these individuals in creating those products or services, and they are also a part of the local economy, so part of sort of economic development, if you will. So just to restate, I mean, these are really the distinctive features. You know, we're talking about businesses that, yes, they earn revenue, but they reinvest that revenue to help provide more people with jobs to build their skills. And that's really key here. There's a lot more sustainability to this model than that of many workforce programs because there is a revenue source, and I'll reflect on that a little bit in our data. You know, helps people willing and able to work, can't get a job. It's cost effective, and then it's very demand driven and really focused on employer needs, and again, we'll speak about that a little bit more. So, you know, what's the value proposition here? I mean, you know, fundamentally, chronic joblessness has huge impacts on our community. There are millions of people, we've found, certainly from our work, thousands of people who are willing and able to work, but they have a really tough time getting a job because of their background. They're literally excluded from the economy. And when you do provide an opportunity to work to these individuals, there are enormous ripple effects. They're bringing their talent to the economy, they're paying taxes, they're participating in the community, they're fostering the success of their children, they're changing their behavior, they're ending their cycle through these costly government programs, and employers can access a dedicated, hard-working workforce for their frontline positions. So economic and social benefits, I'll talk a little more about that. So what do we know about what has really happened as a result of this work? We had the opportunity, we're part of the Social Innovation Fund, which is a program of the federal government that seeks to lift up promising practices like this and build the evidence base. We partnered with Mathematica Policy Research on a study of our portfolio in California, found out that indeed we are serving and assisting people who do face significant barriers. It even surprised us that a full quarter of the people with an average age of about 40 had never had a legitimate job. 85% no stable housing, 71% of their monthly income came from government benefits, 23% from work, and about 70% had been convicted of a crime. We found that while they were in the social enterprise, what kind of support were they getting? You can kind of see a whole array, you know, avoiding relapse of behavior, substance abuse services, you know, sort of a variety of assistance. And then how did this actually impact people? Well, first of all, good news, 268% increase in income. These are still low-income people, but a big increase in income. And then income from government benefits versus their income from work literally reversed. Had been 70% government, 30% from other sources, flipped, so it was more than 70% from their earnings, from their jobs. And then job retention, what we found is an appreciable difference, quite a significant difference. 37% of the people, we did a comparison, who had only received sort of your typical, you know, help writing a resume or how do you interview with an employer, et cetera. About 37% of them had a job 1 year later, whereas 56% of those hired by the social enterprise had the job 1 year later. Housing stability tripled. So, you know, a lot of very positive effects. We also did a cost-benefit analysis. We wanted to see, what's the net effect for society. As you can see, we looked at a number of different factors. What did we find out? Well, the news was also very good here. In total, for every dollar spent, $2.23 in benefits. What does this mean? So if a social enterprise spends $100,000, the return is $223,000 to society. $131,000 of that is due to reduced public benefits, avoided incarceration, things like that, so those positive impacts. But then in terms of sort of this business model that we're talking about, $90,000 from the social enterprise business revenues and the fact that the workers themselves are increasing their incomes. So unlike a typical program where those are, sort of the cost of the program is a negative, if you will, in a cost-benefit analysis, here it's a positive because we're really generating revenue. Okay, so what is REDF? I'm just going to state this briefly. We're a California-based nonprofit. We provide capital and technical assistance to these businesses, sort of like a venture capital firm, but we're looking for social return. We've long focused on social impact, and we're really committed now, particularly now, to building a vibrant ecosystem around the country. We've operated primarily in California, but we're about to expand nationally. So our mission: creating jobs and employment opportunities for people who face barriers. And then our values really rooted in this. We just believe that the opportunity to work should be available to everyone, everywhere, because we know how powerful that can be in the lives of people, the lives of the community. All told, we've helped almost 10,000 people get jobs. We've assisted about 60 social enterprises. They've actually generated, we're heading toward about $150 million in revenue. What are some of the current investments? I just wanted to give you a sense of them. And just to begin to give some examples, an interesting one in the category of partnership with the mainstream companies is Juma Ventures. They employ young people who face significant barriers to getting through high school, through college, and they do ballpark concessions. So the young people get employed, and they get a whole variety of support services. They do this in partnership with Centerplate, which is a big concessions business, and they're deepening their partnership with them now. What are the demographics of the portfolio? Excuse me. As you can see, we're serving a large number of African Americans, Latinos, many people, quarter with no high school diploma when they come in, a large number of men. And, about 30% have dependents, not necessarily with them, but they do have dependents, and often the result of work is that they begin to reunify with those dependents. So what's the role of the business community? So to scale up, first of all, we need a market for the goods and services that the social enterprises are selling, and to hire the people who are prepared to work by social enterprise. We need funding for the capital costs, we need talent, policy for a conducive environment, and we need to know what works best. There are many companies who are already hiring from and supporting this target population in the United States. And you get a sampling here, and I just wanted to give you a couple of interesting examples. Starbucks recently started a program called, actually a new entity called Leaders Up, to work with their supply chain explicitly on the employment of young people who otherwise can't get a chance. They did a pilot in Columbus, Ohio with SK Food Group. They hired 100 youth locally. 80% of them were retained for 6 months, compared to the industry average, 50%. And this was really interesting. They had a 2-to-1 hire-to-interview ratio, whereas the standard for the field is 18-to-1. So you can see the benefit there. Alliance Boots is an interesting company that's just merged with Walgreens. In the UK, which is where they're based, they've had an ex-offender employment initiative, and they've brought together a number of companies, about a dozen companies in the UK now, that's very focused in and targeting that population. They've said they have stronger performance, reliability, et cetera, from these employees. And then Bank of America's had a very interesting program that few people know about internally, where they have sort of an internal social enterprise that services some of the internal needs of the company, and they have 350 people with severe disabilities employed by that sort of internal social enterprise. So I just wanted to give you a little sampling of that. And then these are just some frameworks, and they just explain, those examples that many companies have used. One is partnerships with local service agencies. That's kind of the most typical, where a company partners up with some nonprofits or social enterprises that are a pipeline of trained and prepared people, maybe provide retention supports to people. There's the in-house social enterprise, as I described with Bank of America. There's the idea of sort of outsourced staffing. Some of these companies work with staffing agencies, and they're offering, temporary permanent positions, work trials, internships, but they really outsource to a staffing agency that in turn collaborates with community-based organizations. There are a number of companies doing this. And then sector-focused employer groups, and you heard a little earlier about some initiatives that sort of put in place the infrastructure so that the whole sector can collaborate and do better. Walmart, for example, has a huge initiative. I believe they're putting $1 billion into it in the retail industry to try to help upskill the frontline workers that are in that industry. Internationally, I have to say, and just saying this in a provocative way, perhaps for U.S.-based companies, there's been a lot more that's gone on in this arena, a lot more companies that are deeply engaged and that are excited about doing this, so I think there's a lot of room in the U.S. context to do more. We've talked a lot today about how to frame out the business case, and this is really the business case we've been making, and we found a lot of uptake for this. You get a stronger, more loyal workforce, access to a larger pool of talent, greater employee diversity, which many companies are looking for, more engagement, skill development of employees. The positive financial impact is very important to many on reduced recruitment and training costs. For some of the smaller companies, the tax credits, some of the subsidies are important. And then, of course, an enhanced reputation for social responsibility. What's next? I just wanted to leave you with the context here. So we've estimated that there are about 21 million people in the categories we discussed earlier, roughly 10 million with disabilities, roughly 10 million who face these other barriers, who are able to work, want to work, would like to be in the workforce, but really are not in the workforce. And if you look at the jobless rates in those populations, they run 50 to 80%. What we're losing in productivity, not to mention good health, is really almost criminal in and of itself, and we can do a lot better. We know we can do a lot better. So we've set an aspirational goal of an additional 50,000 people employed nationally through employer partnerships around the country, the right kinds of policies that allow this to go forward, the right kinds of capital, business advice. Right now, our estimate is there are roughly 200,000 people employed in these kinds of businesses around the country. So imagine if we had an ecosystem, if you will, that provided jobs to, let's say, 250,000 people, and if there was more throughput, i.e. more of the people who got jobs in these companies actually were able to move along into mainstream companies, find a welcoming, supportive environment, and then upskill and move on. I think it would have a profound impact economically and certainly on health, and I'd be glad to discuss some of these other programs. And then there are several intermediaries around the country like REDF that are working in this arena and that are engaged with this. And so we have very promising days ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carla. We're going to quickly go to Mr. Farad Ali, President and CEO of the Institute, formerly North Carolina Institute of Minority Economic Development. Farad directs the Institute staff in the development and implementation of programs and strategies that work to improve utilization of historically underutilized business. And then after Farad, we'll have some time for questions. Thank you.